moments of achievement.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Metcalf comes up. The Coens win.
Of revolutionary change.
Free at last. Thank God Almighty. We are free at last.
Of profound breakthrough.
Lasting peace in Northern Ireland.
Of being the first.
Amelia Earhart proving women could match men.
I accept your nomination.
Of the triumph of the human spirit.
Mr. Nelson Mandela, a free man, his first steps into a new South Africa.
Those moments of joy and pride and accomplishment, new struggle. And frustration. They came out of anger and pain. They were born from defeat and the need for defiance.
The public schools of Little Rock.
What has always led us to overcome these challenges is a decision to act. That decision can be burdened by the weight of history, or it can be the simplest act of putting one foot in front of the other.
Every day is a choice. Every day we all make a decision.
It is the power of what we do with that choice, our commitment to act, that drives the Clinton Global Initiative community to change the world.
Look at all the good that's been done because you made a decision about what to do with your mind and your heart.
We choose to get back up.
We have superhumans on the streets of Ukraine, not victims of war.
We choose to reach out to others.
Big problems have very simple solutions. Start cooking and start reaching the people.
We choose to recognize the infinite potential of the smallest moments.
If we want to create a sustainable and safe future for children, we must start with education.
Go and create the future you want to live in.
We choose to solve problems.
We need to invest in people where they are because they're going to invest in everybody else around them.
Our values call us to put people first and the ecosystems that support them.
Power to the people.
We choose to embrace innovation.
Solving these challenges requires collaboration and innovative thinking.
If we don't work together, it doesn't get done.
We choose to stand up and seek justice.
The world should be standing up for freedom, and it has to start in Ukraine.
We choose to see the world not how it is, but how it should be.
We are in this race between hope and fear, between decency and cruelty. It's a moment for all of us to fight for a better life for all.
This is a global responsibility, an obligation, not an option.
We choose to hope.
All these little things some people may say are incremental turn out to be a great big mountain.
We choose to keep going.
Please welcome President Bill Clinton.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome to the 2023 meeting of CGI. Whether you've traveled from across town or across the globe, I want to thank you all for coming. It's a great honor for Hillary, Chelsea, and me, and for all of our staff. But I also want to recognize first the people who are our sponsors, because they make it possible to make this a truly representative meeting. The sponsors make it possible for us to be able to bring grassroots leaders and people from small NGOs that would otherwise not be able to afford the trip or the lodging. So I'm very grateful to them. But mostly I'm grateful to all of you for coming. And I want to get right into it because we got a lot to deal with today. Here's what I hope you will be thinking about over the next 2 days. There are, as the film just pointed out beautifully, there are choices we all make every day. Every single day, we wake up and it's like there's a scale inside us. And it's tilted a little positive, it's tilted a little negative, maybe it's just in balance. And then we decide, what are we going to do in the faces of life challenges, big and small? And whether we recognize it or not, we are making those decisions all the time. That's what this is about. How do we avoid getting discouraged? How do we avoid giving up? How do ordinary people, in the face of insurmountable obstacles, keep going? Are we going to live our lives in a way that make the most of the moment, or that reflect the resentments and scars and burdens of what happened to us yesterday? Do we really believe we can make the future better for ourselves and others, or not? Simple, basic choices, of which many of us are not aware as we make them. I think about the mother I met in Africa, getting up every day and working simply 1/4 acre of land with nothing but hand tools so she'd be able to send her children to school. I think about young people leading the fights against climate change, for racial justice. Thinking, doesn't matter if I'm rich and famous and powerful, I can still make a difference and I can't let anything stand in my way. I think about all those scientific researchers that have been unbelievably ridiculed in the modern age, struggling to find a cure, this time for COVID. It's working over and over and over again and bringing out a life-saving set of vaccines in record time in the face of people attacking them and their methods daily. These people do what they do because they think the future can be better than the present, and because they can't live with any other choice. They have to do it. Most of us do what we do because we want to do it. And that's why you're here. Why you, when you came here, many of you had to make plans to make sure your loved ones are all right. That your projects were still moving forward, that you could take this time off to come here and think about this and talk to people who were probably very different from you about how we're going to get the show on the road. So that's what this is about. We have a responsibility to try to make a difference. And that's why we started holding these CGI meetings all those years ago. The response has been remarkable, and I can now say with the partnerships and projects launched at just last year's meeting, there have now been more than 4,000 commitments to action at CGI, and they now are making difference in the lives of more than 500 million people in 180 countries. And given the turmoil we've lived through for the last 5 or 6 years, I'm also very proud that there have now been more than 10,000 organizations who've been part of these commitments. Because we have to not only keep the progress going, we have to keep proving every single day that our common humanity is more important than our interesting differences, that cooperation beats conflict, and inclusion is better than division. We still have to do it every day. And we have to do it knowing, if we're totally honest with ourselves, that the political scales inside our spirit don't reward the right choices every day. Not for any of us. So that's why this is important. I thank you for coming these 2 days. Giving up and giving in is a surefire guarantee that we will not make progress on the major challenges facing us. Being distracted and majoring in the minors may be momentary good politics, but it's a terrible way to run a railroad or a country or build a future for our children. So over the next 2 days, make the most of this opportunity. Talk to people you might not otherwise meet. Keep yourself open to new ideas and new perspectives. And above all, steel yourself to keep going, whatever that looks like, because our future depends on it. Thank you. Have a good day. All of us, I don't know if you can see him, but the Pope is with us today and looking in on us. There he is. Holy Father, we're so honored to have you join us at CGI this year. You're speaking to a room full of people from all over the world, from all walks of life, who each in their own way are trying to follow the admonition of Isaiah, who told us we had to be repairers of the breach. They know our world is broken in many ways, but also full of many possibilities. and they are trying to make the most of their ability to make a difference. I thought it would be interesting, given our, for me, wonderful meeting a few weeks ago, if you could say what you believe about the obligations of ordinary people to make a difference, to deal with these big challenges that are so big that no person, no matter how wealthy or powerful, no person can believe that he or she could do them alone. What are ordinary people supposed to do with their days that will make our societies better or our problems less severe? We can't hear. Can you hear?
Thank you, Mr. President, for inviting me to your meeting. Thank you very much. It is important to spread a culture of encounter, a culture of dialogue, a culture of listening and of understanding. It is necessary to share thoughts on how to contribute to the common good and how not to leave behind the most vulnerable people, such as children, who through the foundation, the patrons of Bambino Gesù, are at the root of this meeting. We all know it. We are living through a changing epoch. Only together can we emerge from it better. Together. Only together can we heal the world from the globalization of indifference. You, Mr. President, have listed the many challenges of our time: climate change, humanitarian crises affecting migrants and refugees, and childcare, and many others. I would add to these the wind of war that blows around the world, fueling with the spirit of war what I have repeatedly called the Third World War fought piecemeal. We are in need of a great and shared assumption of responsibility. No challenge is too great if we meet it starting with personal conversion, the personal conversion of each of us, the personal contribution that each of us can make to solve it, and from an awareness of what it is that makes us part of one destiny. No challenge can be overcome alone. Not alone, only together, sisters and brothers, children of God. This is why I always encourage, and I want to do so here as well, all women and men of goodwill, not to give up in the face of difficulties. Difficulties are part of life, and the best way to deal with them is to always seek the common good, never alone, always together. Difficulties can bring out the best or the worst in us. Therein lies our challenge. Fighting selfishness, narcissism, division with generosity and humility. Better unity than conflict. It is time to find the path of peace, the change for fraternity. It is time for weapons to cease and for us to return to dialogue, to diplomacy. Let the designs of conquest and military aggression cease. That is why I repeat, no to war. No to war. It's time to work together to stop the ecological catastrophe before it's too late. That's why I have chosen to write a new document 10 years after the publication of the encyclical Laudato Si. Let us stop while there is still time, please. Please let us stop while there is still time. It's time to face migration emergencies, remembering that we are not talking about numbers, but about people, men, women, and children. When we talk about migration, let's think about the eyes of the children we've seen in refugee camps. It's time to think about the youngest, the children, and of their education and to their care. As you know, Mr. President, this meeting of ours stems from a great small project that I care about very much. It is about children and their health. In Italy, in Rome, near the Vatican, there's a very special hospital, the Bambino Gesù Children's Hospital. In the world, it is known as the Pope's Hospital, but to me, that's not why it is unique. It is evident that our great little hospital cannot solve the problems of all the children in the world. However, it seeks to be a sign, a testimony that it is possible, through many struggles, to bring together great scientific research geared toward caring for children and the gratuitous welcoming of people in need. Science and hospitality. Rarely are these two things found together at such a high level. The hospital welcomes children. Here in the Vatican, 2 or 3 times a helicopter has arrived with children who need help, urgent help, from different parts of the world. In these terrible months marked by war, the Bambino Gesù Hospital has treated more than 2,000 small young patients from Ukraine who escaped from their country with their parents and relatives. In the healthcare sector, today more than ever, the first and most concrete form of charity is science, the capacity to care, which, however, must be accessible to all. Bambino Gesù Hospital is a concrete sign of charity and mercy of the Church. There are illnesses that cannot be cured, but there are no children who cannot be cared for. Let's keep this in mind. There are illnesses that cannot be cured, but there are no children who cannot be cared for. This is the distinctive feature of the hospital. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you all. And I wish you all a nice day.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to see you again and hear you in such great voice. And thank you for saying something that I hope will mean something to every person. Because one of the things that we try to do, which is difficult enough in any form of life, but especially in public life, is to convince every person that he or she has a role to play, without regard to their age or their standing. And I think you make us all feel empowered. And perhaps that is your greatest power as the Pope, that you make everybody, even people who aren't members of the Roman Catholic Church, feel that they have power and therefore they have responsibility. It is an extraordinary gift, and I thank you for that. And I know you have a busy day, but I wonder if there's anything else you want to say. I thank you for what you said about the children and what you said about climate change. Do you have any other message for us before you go? Anything you want to make sure we take to heart?
Both things. Children and climate change, please. On climate change, let us take action before it's too late.
Thank you. Bless you. Thank you. Thank you very much. You can stay all day. One of the most important things to come out of the Clinton Global Initiative has been the mountain of evidence that what really works in the modern world is partnership. It's a fact that diverse groups make better decisions than homogeneous ones that are lone geniuses. That's because we learn things from people who know things we don't and who may view the world differently than we do. You start seeing some amazing things, like a movie star with a passion for giving back, joining forces with a sanitation engineer to form one of the most impactful clean water NGOs in the world, or the trade organization that represents laundromats across America, teaming up with my foundation's Early Learning Initiative to encourage parents to read with their children while they wait for their laundry. The model works. More than 10,000 organizations have been part of the commitments to action made at CGI. And now the idea that working together beats going it alone is taking root well beyond our CGI community.
Please welcome Lorenzo Lewis and Huda Ghazi.
When I was 6 years old, being too young to stay at home alone, I would catch the bus to my aunt's salon every day after school. I wanted to play outside, but instead I had to listen to life stories of everyday people that came into my Aunt Daisy's beauty salon, The Village in Little Rock, Arkansas. My Aunt Daisy was hardworking and compassionate, and her salon, though small, was illuminating. My childhood was triggering and overwhelming at times, but it was also beautiful. Those days spent in her salon showed me that people can make a difference in the life of others just by a simple gesture, in a decent conversation, and it made me realize how a single moment seated in a salon or a barber chair has the power to create lasting impact or even a movement.
So if I ask you to close your eyes and think of Africa, I bet most of you would see giraffes and safaris, or probably kids barefoot running in the dust. The cliché of Africa is really a succession of tragedy, famine, epidemics. But the reality is that those challenges are tremendous. As of today, 1.3 billion Africans, representing soon 25% of our population, and in 2100, 1/3. And Africa is also the youngest continent, with a median age of 20 years old, 60% below 25, and all aspiring to have a decent life. Africans are still poor, mostly. Poor access to clean water, energy, transportation, food security, and above all, the biggest tragedy is poor access to education. That is not inclusive of the large bottom of the pyramid. Just to give you an example, Africa needs 100 times more universities to be able to really answer to the needs. And let's admit it, often inefficient policies that were not able to address these issues so far.
Over the years, therapy and personal development has helped me to work through some traumatic experiences in my childhood. I recognize the same pain and needed for coping skills in so many other marginalized Black men and boys, which led me to create the Confess Project of America in 2016 to provide others with mental health strategies and coping skills to have them move past their own pain. Suicide is the third leading cause of death for Black men between the ages of 18 and 24, and only 4% of clinicians in the mental health field are people of color. Spending time with my Aunt Daisy is where social innovation and a journey of impact met me, as it speaks to the work that the Confess Project of America now does in over 52 cities in 30 states, training barbers and stylists to be mental health advocates. In 2022, the Confess Project made a commitment to action to increase mental health access and decrease the stigma of mental health by meeting people where they already are, in barbershops. Since then, in partnership with the Department of Behavioral Health in Georgia, we've expanded our training to women to train 500 beauty stylists. 50% of the barbers and stylists have gone through the training are better informed about mental health than they were before. Because of the support of CGI, we have expanded a recent partnership with the Walmart Foundation addressing juvenile justice strategies in Arkansas. We've also formed a partnership with Truist Bank to help expand our curriculum across the Southeast in 20 barber schools. I am proud to share with you that the Confess Project of America is now reaching 3.8 million people annually through our training of network of barbers and hairstylists.
Now, you may think that there is no straightforward solution. We believe that education is the one. Africa does not have the luxury to take its time and build universities the same traditional way than in the Western countries, so it will have to leapfrog to advanced technology and innovation and alternative education. Seeing this, we started in 2016 OST, which is a not-for-profit supporting young entrepreneurs in Africa. We started in Tunisia, and together with Columbia University, we built a program that targeted 100 youth, trained every year, mentored them, offered them an international exposure, and we scaled the model slowly through the whole country, targeting all universities with hundreds of faculty that were all trained to help us in our mission. In 7 years, we supported 2,000 students, around 400 youth-led startups using technology to solve global issues. And guess what? After 7 years, 98% of our entrepreneurs are unemployed, whether they have their own venture or they're working for other companies, which is a remarkable outcome in a country where 30% of graduates are employed only. Today, I stand before you to announce the OST's commitment to expand the model across Africa. We tried it in Morocco, and we tried it in Senegal, and it worked. We're trying to do that at scale, and this initiative has catalyzed a diverse alliance, including Columbia University, but also MIT said, let's join. And we added also many countries, the US Embassy, the German government, the European Union, BPI France, Digital Africa, the initiative of Macron, Fondation Drosos, Africanvest, and InstaDeep, one of the first unicorns in AI built in Africa. The commitment to action will empower communities to change the narrative of the continent and showcase the power of talent that exists in our youth.
It is no surprise that any of us here today, it's not always easy. There are days when it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Over the last year, we faced changes in funding and organizational shifts. But last year, we made a commitment to help 300 barbers and stylists learn mental health strategies to support their clients, their families, and their community members. And with the support of this community, we will see our commitment to action go to create a culture of mental health for communities of color. In times when I start to lose hope, I remember the compassion that I felt as a young child with my Aunt Daisy. We must all remain compassionate and resilient. We have to keep going.
So I come all the way from Tunisia. that little country in North Africa that used flowers to disrupt old regimes. Some of you know us as the creators of the spring, but in reality, we want to create the entrepreneurship and innovation that is built in Africa. Tunisia offered its name to Ifriqiya. Initially, it was called Ifriqiya. And as of today, I'm very humbled to use my voice to make the case of our youth. I've never thought one day His Holiness would open the floor to me and my friend Lorenzo. I think we can retire, Lorenzo. Yeah. But I also never thought that we could transform a national competition into an African ecosystem, recognized, globally connected, and changing the narrative of Africa with Europe, the US, because Africa is the future. We refuse to believe that there is no solution. There is no curse. There just needs to be a shift in the paradigm. There needs to be new solutions, and we are witnessing this shift. We are all in this journey together because it's our future, and we will make sure that this reality across the continent happens. And until then, well, just keep going, all keep going. Enjoy your day.
I could not be happier that I've had a chance today to see firsthand what is happening here at the Foundation for Recovery. I just saw a room packed with volunteers who are putting together the recovery kits. I just wanted to come and see all of you and thank every one of you and tell you how meaningful this work is. Thank you very, very much.
Since 2019, we've distributed and received over 20,000 life-saving overdose prevention kits, which has been a collaborative effort with the Clinton Foundation that actually revive and reverse a preventable opioid overdose.
So happy to meet you. 3 in 4 people who struggle with addiction do eventually recover. But they can't recover if we ignore them, deny resources for them, think prison is the answer instead of recovery is the answer. And so we've got work to do.
Thank you all for all the work you're doing. You're not just saving people's lives, you are truly the glue that's keeping our civilization together. By caring, by loving. And the Clinton Global Initiative, I can't think of a better organization that then glues the rest of us together and reminds us how we have to help each other.
It is all about separating us from the differences that divide us and finding common ground, because when we work together, guess what? We get really great things done.
Please welcome President Bill Clinton and Ziv Avram.
I really liked that last section, and I hope you did. I think of all the challenges we face, it is likely that none requires more collective action than seriously addressing climate change. Every day we have new evidence of the new reality we already live in. The wildfires are more deadly and more rapidly moving. The floods are deeper, the droughts are longer, the hurricanes and typhoons more severe. Record air and ocean temperatures, species die-offs, and with every new headline, the reminder that the longer we fail to act, the more severe the consequences will be. Things will get worse, and they, in turn, will exacerbate our other political challenges, including poverty, hunger, malnutrition, disease, and of course, armed conflict. But there's a flip side here. We know that if we work together, whenever we do it seriously, deliberately and over an extended period of time, things get better. We can lift up the human community, we can improve the human condition, and we know that there's something for everybody to do, particularly in this space. Entrepreneurs and innovators all around the world have already proven that there are significant responses to climate change which will make things better, lower future risks, and improve outcomes. Today, I'm pleased to introduce one of them. Ziv Aviram is an Israeli whom I last saw in Morocco. He has spent a lot of time and effort to unlock the entrepreneurial skills of people in North Africa and the Middle East, and to reach across the divides to prove that a common future can be built. Now, I'll let him explain it, but he decided on his own, that's how we found him and how we began to work together. And he decided on his own that the rest of us had not done enough about climate change, which was painfully self-evident, but a lot of people say that and never do anything about it. So I would like to introduce Ziv Aviram.
President Clinton, distinguished guests, good morning. Thank you, Mr. President, for the warm words. What an honor to stand here with you on this prominent stage. We worked very hard to reach this moment of the announcement, and I'm eager to see the results of our initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, the world is a global theater. Yet, one voice has orchestrated a unique and significant forum focusing on acting for the better. That voice belongs to you, President Clinton. Thanks to your leadership and commitment, we all stand here today ready to lend a united hand and address one of the most critical challenges of our time, climate change. Our planet is crying out for help. Devastating wildfires ravaging Australia and Canada. Hawaii faces the deadliest US blaze in a century. Destructive hurricanes and typhoons are smashing against our coastlines. Crippling droughts are consuming Africa. And unprecedented heat waves are striking Europe and North America. These disastrous events are alarming signs of a new normal that we cannot and should not accept. Throughout my career, I was privileged to build companies that harness technology to empower people. Inspired by you, President Clinton, now I aspire to extend that ethos and harness technology to help our planet. Following long and extensive preparations, today we proudly announce I joined climate tech fund EcoBridge. Thank you. EcoBridge represents the opportunity to create a future in which economic growth and environmental prosperity are two sides of the same coin. Through EcoBridge Fund, we will invest in a wide range of cutting-edge technologies that will shape a sustainable future for our children. History teaches us that humanity has the resilience to conquer great challenges, be it pandemics, devastating wars, or tyranny. President Clinton, we are both full-heartedly committed to do everything in our power and leave no stone unturned until we find the most innovative ideas that will hopefully rebalance our world. I call upon you, fellow business leaders, join us. Join us, and together we will tackle the climate crisis and turn it into a triumph. Let's ensure a better tomorrow for us and for all future generations. After all, we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. Thank you.
Please welcome Dr. Chelsea Clinton.
Good morning, everyone. I promise I did not quite know the hue of the blue to match so awkwardly and meticulously. I am incredibly grateful for our next conversation because we are coming together at a moment where there is both kind of enormous reason for optimism about the fight against HIV and AIDS, and also deeply concerning and less than encouraging news in the ongoing effort to end AIDS. The good news stems from a recent report from UNAIDS that we can end new HIV infections and the public health emergency that has been AIDS for more than 3 decades if we stay the course by 2030. This is only possible as a promise because of the extraordinary work of activists, of advocates, of scientists, of grassroots organizers, of doctors, of nurses, of midwives, of many of you here in this room over the many decades of HIV and AIDS. It is particularly meaningful to us here at the Clinton Foundation to be on this precipice because the origin of the foundation really began in 2002 when my father and Nelson Mandela at the Barcelona AIDS conference that year decided to do something about the deep inequity that existed in access to HIV/AIDS treatment. People here in the United States were more likely to have access, although still far too few did. But people living in South Africa and in much of the global South had no effective access to the medicines that were able to turn AIDS into a chronic, livable illness. Because that cost of treating a person per year more than 20 years ago was $10,000. And so my father launched the Clinton HIV/AIDS Initiative, now CHI, to turn what had been a high-price, low-volume market into a high-volume, low-price market. And today, the average cost of treating a person per year in the global South is less than $60. So I am incredibly proud of this work and proud that my father and the many thousands of extraordinary people who have worked at CHI and continue to work at CHI kind of have taken that as only a reason to keep going to do more. And so CHI has negotiated more than 140 different commodities arrangements enabling earlier detection, treatment, and when possible vaccination against a number of the health scourges that still take far too many lives of far too many people around the world. And we know that while the end of AIDS being in sight is an incredible testament to the work of everyone over the last 30 plus years to get us at this point, as we heard earlier in the conversation about protecting HIV/AIDS rights, we cannot take our foot off the pedal, and we cannot mistake progress for success, and we cannot take for granted that everyone will recognize the importance of this fight for justice, equity, and health. Because while certainly we are very proud at CHAI for all the work that we've been able to be part of, to pioneer, to stand behind, to learn from, we know that much of our work, as much of the work of any of us in this room who have been engaged in this fight, has been made possible by the work of the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, by UNAIDS, by the World Health Organization, by UNICEF, by many of those who have been at the large global multilateral institutions, many of whom in turn have received support from PEPFAR, the US President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief that President Bush launched in 2003. It is the single largest effort ever undertaken against a single disease in history. And it is one that for much of its 2-decade existence has received, even recently, strong bipartisan support here in the United States. And yet today, reauthorization for PEPFAR is not something that we can take for granted. And without the continued support of the United States government and effectively of citizens here in the United States, we will not be able to turn AIDS into part of our history instead of still such a stranglehold of our present and a shadow for our future. So while the UNAIDS report suggests that the data is robust and strong and that we can end AIDS as a public health crisis and end new HIV infections by 2030, that is only possible if we sustain political will and funding and focus it on where the virus continues to spread most rapidly. And at the moment, that is among women and children. A staggering 84,000 kids around the world still die from AIDS every year. And so for those of us who care about children, for those of us who care about equity, for those of us who care about justice, for those of us who care about public health, we have to care about the fight for PEPFAR reauthorization. And yet we know that's still only one critical step in reaching the milestone that UNAIDS tells us is possible. And we know once we reach that milestone, we have to continue to provide support so that everyone living with HIV and AIDS is able to live lives full of dignity, promise, purpose, and hopefully then die of something else at 100. Because if 100 is the milestone that we're also all marching toward, everyone who lives with HIV and AIDS deserves to reach that milestone too. And so I just hope that if you didn't know what PEPFAR was 3 minutes ago, you do now. I hope that even if you think AIDS isn't your issue and kids is, you now care about this. And I hope that at least some of you and all of the Americans in this room make sure that your elected representatives know why this is important to you and why it is clearly so evidently, I hope now, important to all of us. And so with that, it is my incredible honor to introduce someone who knows quite a bit about the effort to put AIDS in the rearview mirror, Winnie Byanyima, who is the executive director of UNAIDS and has dedicated her life to helping to advance issues that relate to women and children's rights, health, safety, equity, and equality for all of us. She is someone I have long admired, and I am quite giddy that I get to monopolize the next 16 minutes of her time to learn from her about what she thinks all of us need to know about the fight to end AIDS as it relates to both this global public health crisis and anything and everything else that we all care about. Please join me in giving Winnie a very, very warm welcome to the stage. Winnie, thank you so much. So Winnie, thank you so much for being here. And I hope that we could start with you kind of sharing with the audience kind of why there is optimism from UNAIDS perspective. Kind of what is it that you see kind of in the data that compelled you to put a stake in the ground to say, you know, if we stay the course, we can end new HIV infections by 2030?
Thank you, Chelsea. And thank you for inviting me here to be with you. Thank the Clinton Global Initiative for making this an important issue, because today there are so many crises in the world that it is dropping off the agenda. But there are 3 reasons why it shouldn't. One, it's because AIDS is not over. The fight is not over. You've spoken so well about it. We've got 30 million people on treatment globally, living healthy lives, but we've got another 9 million people living with HIV who are not on treatment. We must reach them. So AIDS is not over. But secondly, because we know how to end AIDS. We know we have a clear means of how to do it, even though there's no cure and no vaccine. We've got tools in between to get everyone, first to prevent infections, new infections, and to get everyone on treatment if they are. So we have the means, but we lack the will. So the third reason why we must keep this alive on the agenda is that it's a smart investment to fight HIV/AIDS. When you fight HIV/AIDS, the things you do to fight HIV/AIDS also contribute to achieving the other Sustainable Development Goals. Secondly, fighting HIV/AIDS is prevention. When you're preventing HIV infections, you're also preventing, those same things prevent other pandemics and give capacity to be prepared for any future ones. So it's a smart investment. These things are being discussed here at the UNGA, but often disconnected from HIV/AIDS. So those are the reasons. So then we've come a long way and we know how to do it. Like I said, like you said, the world came together at the height of this disease. This didn't happen with COVID. The world came together, agreed to fight together, made commitments and clear targets that are renewed every 5 years. Heads of state come here every 5 years and make a new declaration, set new targets, and work together globally. Leaders rose like your father, like President Bush, and after that global consensus came with this PEPFAR contribution, injecting financing capacities in the developing world where it was weaker and where the burden was highest. So PEPFAR came, Global Fund came, and then people themselves fought, and again leaders rose and prices came down, and everyone could have this life-saving pill. So we need to repeat those successes. And thank you for bringing us here to do that, to remind people that 30 years ago, the world came together, 40 years ago, and that now we've achieved so much. We've got 30 million people living good lives. We have another 9 million to bring to treatment, and we've got children who are dying because the gap between them and adults on reaching treatment is so wide. We can't reach them. We need to reach them. So the job is not done.
You know, Winnie, reflecting, listening to you, how much of a challenge do you think kind of the success of the last kind of 40 years when the world first really came together at the first International AIDS Conference, kind of set a set of goals, kind of more countries, kind of more science, more activists kind of came to every conference. That we had the birth of the Global Fund, kind of PEPFAR, that so many people who may not be as close to this as you or I think, well, so much has happened, it's now time to focus on something else. Right? Look, wow, 30 million people are on treatment. Instead of, I think, what you and I believe, well, then we have to get the 9 million more people on treatment. We have to prevent every kind of new infection, whether kind of mother to child, kind of sexual transmission. Like everyone deserves to be able to have the tools to keep themselves safe and healthy. Other people may focus, well, look at the 30 million people on treatment. Doesn't that mean we can do less? How do you respond to that?
Well, every life counts. And when you look at who is not getting what they need to protect themselves or to get on treatment and live well, it's a sad story. These 9 million people are not 9 million who need to get on treatment, but there's also 1.3 million people newly infected every year as well. So when you look at who is at risk and who is not on treatment, it's a sad story about who we are as a world.
And who we value.
Who we value, because indeed, the majority of new infections in the world today are women and girls in Africa. Poor countries, poor women and girls. The majority of people who, or the group that is also most at risk and doesn't get access to treatment are LGBTQ people, transgender women, gay men, and often those in the categories of poor as well. So a combination of access of inequality, poverty, race, gender, even disability, work against people and put them at more risk, not only to get infected, but also less opportunity to get what they need to get on treatment. So it is it's a disease of injustice. It is not, it is injustice, it is inequality that drives this. But we know that when you start to close the gaps on rights, when you ensure everybody has equal rights, when you allow civil society, communities to engage, to lead, when you can use the data sharply to target who needs prevention and who needs treatment, you start to see progress. But all lives matter. We can't say we've done 30 million, let the 9 million die. We cannot say that. So all lives matter, and children, LGBTQ people, girls and women, especially in Africa, are most at risk. We're failing them.
We are certainly failing them, and yet we are more likely to be able to reach more people in more places if we have both PEPFAR reauthorization and also continued global commitment and leadership from a lot of the people who are across town at UNGA. And so I wonder, kind of, Winnie, as you have been kind of so deeply in this work, what you have found kind of are the arguments that work to help those that we need on our side to keep going.
Yeah. Well, first there are I could identify 5 key elements of making progress, how we've gotten here. One, it is the strong political leadership you're mentioning. The people across on the east side, we have to mobilize them. From the national level to the global level, we need strong political leadership. It's failing now. We are in a world where the geopolitics have gone crazy. And it's even hard to get leaders to stay committed to what they committed long ago. So building that trust and political leadership is key here. We need to follow the science, as I said, to address the real epidemic in each country, not the epidemic they want to think they have, but to follow the science, the evidence, to close the inequalities for those people most at risk in Africa, women and girls, gay men, and transgender women particularly. We have to let communities lead. That is key. Communities must lead, because actually HIV has transformed global health in this way. By communities coming in, gay groups, women's groups, serving themselves, they serve themselves in dignity. They reach everyone. They reach those who would never be reached. So letting communities lead, but we are seeing civic space shrinking. So we have to fight for that. And fifth, financing. Financing is waning. It's dropping. It's dropping because of geopolitical tensions. It's dropping because of other challenges that have also to be financed, but we have to keep the financing that has been there. So what do we say to them? We say, you're almost there. Look, today we have 5 countries with the highest burden who have already hit the targets for 2025. Botswana, a small country called Eswatini. I wonder whether you know it. It's a little island in the middle of South Africa, but has hit the targets. It's Rwanda, it's Tanzania, these are Botswana. These are countries that have already met the midway target of 2025. Another 16 are almost there. So we're close. Why drop the ball when you are winning? So this is the argument we want to give them. And that when you do it, you also solve other problems. But we have real challenges, Chelsea. This pushback on rights is terrible. I come from Uganda. I think you've heard the story there, that there was a horrible law that was enacted, Anti-Homosexuality Act. But look, what inspires me is that I was there last week, and activists, women and men living with HIV, gay men, have come together, gone to the government and said, okay, you've made that law, we hate it, it's against our lives, but can we help you to explain to security officials, to health officials, to minimize the harm? Can you imagine? They are working with the minister in charge of security to sensitize police, soldiers about how not to do more harm. This is, for me, tells you that we must not give up. If they are there fighting, we can't.
And I mean, when we see kind of so much of what has made the progress of the last, particularly a couple of decades against HIV and AIDS, possible under attack. You know, kind of what you mentioned about kind of new laws and places, including in this country. The kind of efforts to kind of retrench funding, the ongoing kind of deep structural vulnerability of kind of girls and women and kind of members of the LGBTQ+ community around the world. And yet we also do have moments, I think, of compelling optimism. The activists that you met last week in Uganda, many of the people here in this room, you yourself, who are kind of admonitions to keep going. And I wonder, you know, if in our closing couple of minutes, kind of you could share any reflections you have from your time at UNAIDS that could be relevant to people who hopefully, you know, care about this, but their central kind of compulsion is climate change or girls' rights broadly or education. Kind of what do you think you've learned that could be relevant to anyone as they think about the need to keep going?
Okay, before I get there, let me inject myself in your politics.
Please, inject away, Winnie, you're always welcome.
Yes, I'm going to say to American congressmen and women and senators, please authorize PEPFAR, reauthorize PEPFAR. We need it. We need it. We are here because of the leadership of America, of the generosity of American people, putting these billions into the response. Look, in the high-burden countries, which are in Africa, in many of them, up to 95% of the funding for this, putting people on treatment and prevention, is paid for by this program. And these are countries today that are so highly indebted, they are paying towards servicing their debt, just the interest on their debt, 4-5 times as much as they are putting in their whole health systems, leave alone the bit on HIV. So this is not the time this is the time for the leadership in America to continue doing what it has done right and continue supporting countries to keep their people alive. It is so important. It's been a great part of the success story. 25 million people on treatment today have been supported by the PEPFAR program. So we need it. Now, you say your question was, so I am hopeful. I am hopeful that PEPFAR will be reauthorized because people I know are alive today because this support is there. And it's more needed today than ever before. Your question was? I've forgotten it.
Well, I think maybe you answered it, right? To just have singular, unrelenting focus and to inject yourself in any room or conversation where you need to be to ensure that you can meet your objectives.
Exactly.
And that's really ultimately good for all of us because the return on investment for Americans with PEPFAR has been extraordinary. More than 25 million people are on treatment. What has happened with kind of the number of kids who are then able to go to school, parents who are able to work, kind of sustainable agricultural practices that can be put kind of into motion. Again, anything that may have brought you into this room is related to PEPFAR reauthorization. So at the risk of belaboring, please, to the Americans, call your representatives, and please, to all of you, give Winnie a huge amount of gratitude and appreciation for her time today. Thank you so much.
If there is one message that echoes forth from this conference, let it be that human rights are women's rights and women's rights are human rights once and for all.
We need a generational plan to ensure that we are never silenced again.
How long will it take till Afghan girls are allowed back in their schools? They will fight for their right.
Bodily autonomy is everything. Every time someone is walking through a door of a health center, that is an awakening.
Unleash the potential of women, and that's how you're going to stimulate your economy.
We are joined by so many people making remarkable commitments.
With continued effort, all the world's girls will one day be free.
We're here and we care, and we're going to fight for what we care about until you fight for us.
So as we stand or sit here today, we are witnessing a dangerous and unmistakable global backsliding on the rights of women and girls. From the ban on secondary education for girls in Afghanistan to the abortion bans here in the United States. And it cannot be our charge to ourselves to only stop our rights from being rolled back. We certainly need to reclaim and protect those rights. We also need to accelerate progress and then secure that as well. Empowering women and girls has been at the core of CGI from the very beginning. Probably not surprising, given who my mom is. And also because climate resilience is a women and girls issue, building an inclusive economy is a women's issue, and certainly health equity, as we just heard, is a women's issue. And I think we can all recognize this is not an ordinary moment. And so we here at CGI felt that we needed to be doing even more than we already had been, particularly when we read the recent UN report that said it will take 300 years at current trends to achieve gender equity. 300 years. And so we asked ourselves, what would it take to cut that in half? Or possibly to even achieve full gender equity, and if not in my lifetime, at least in the lifetime of my daughter and my sons. And so we're formalizing a new core focus for CGI, a fourth pillar aimed specifically and ambitiously at what my mother has always called the unfinished business of the 21st century, achieving full equality and equity for all women and all girls once and for all. And we certainly hope that all of you here in this room or watching us online will engage in this work. And we know that we have to draw on the expertise of members of our CGI community today and those who we hope will become part of our CGI community, of truly anyone who's working at the intersection of all of the issues and challenges and opportunities that shape the lives of women and girls around the world. And so, since we like to start with listening and learning, it is my honor to introduce you to some of the women who have long been on the front lines of the fight for gender equality and equity, who have persisted in the face of extraordinary challenges, and who have always kept going, and who are calling on all of us to keep going with them. So please join me in welcoming my friend, Reshma Shujani.
We talk a lot about billion-dollar ideas, crazy gadgets that are going to become the next iPhone, must-haves for a life on Mars. But what if I told you that I had a $100 billion idea, a simple idea, one that would lift up our economies and lift millions of families out of poverty? I'm talking, of course, about investing in working moms. I founded my nonprofit, Moms First, at the height of the pandemic, when women were being pushed out of the workforce in droves and replacing their paid work with unpaid care. 3 years later, things haven't gotten better. America is still the only industrialized nation that doesn't guarantee paid leave. 1 in 4 moms go back to work 2 weeks after having a baby. We invest less in childcare than any other wealthy nation. 40% of families go into debt because of the cost of childcare. This means that every day, parents, especially moms, are forced to make impossible choices between feeding their children and funding daycare, between tending to their careers and tending to their families. Enough is enough. To finish the fight for gender equality, we have to finish the fight for moms. We're done performing a high wire balancing act with no safety net. We're done being that safety net. It's time to invest in policies that are going to help moms not survive, but thrive. Paid leave, affordable childcare, equal pay. I promise this billion-dollar idea will pay dividends.
And now I'd like to introduce Nina and Helena Gwalinga to the stage. Thank you so much.
It's an honor. Growing up in the Amazon rainforest, I saw my mother, my grandmother, and the women in my community take care of the children, teaching us our language, our songs that hold vital information about the rainforest. I also saw them kick out oil companies and militaries from our lands. I saw them lead and guide the younger women and men to become leaders. I have, alongside our elders, fought for the protection of our home successfully. Women across the world face similar challenges where they survive, heal, and lead our solutions and healing of our communities and land. Indigenous women and girls are disproportionately affected by climate change while also facing the challenges for just being born a girl. Yet we are also the ones with the most knowledge and experience in protecting the land. About 1% of all climate philanthropy goes towards Indigenous people. We would estimate that from that, perhaps 10 to 30% goes towards Indigenous women. This is not enough. In 2020, 80% of our community was destroyed by massive floods caused by climate change. The next day, we had to wake up and build it up from scratch. If we want to address climate change, we need to support Indigenous women. With the right resources and support, Indigenous women can protect and restore rivers, rescue seeds of important plants, reforest deforested areas, and heal our communities from the colonial violence that we have faced. Where we come from, Indigenous people protect the vast majority of pristine rainforests, and it's estimated that worldwide, 82% of the entire world's biodiversity is on Indigenous land. No one is better experienced to do this work than Indigenous people, and particularly Indigenous women, who have the experience, the skills, and the love for our people and our land. We are building a world where the Amazon can finally begin to recover and thrive for our children, but also for your children. Yet, we never get a real seat at the table. And we cannot do this alone. The world needs to invest in the expertise of Indigenous women, and that means giving us the right space, time, and the resources that we need. Thank you.
And now please join me in giving a warm welcome to Ashley Judd.
Good morning. I stand here today in solidarity, power, and strength as one of hundreds of millions of women who have survived male sexual violence. A man molested me for the first time that I remember when I was 7 years old, but it was not the last time I suffered due to a culture of demand and entitlement and didn't get justice because of impunity. Like so many other women, my career is very different today because of workplace sexual harassment. And all around the world, in schools and in brothels, in markets and in huts, sexual violence is ubiquitous and it is pervasive. I'm also someone who, for the past 18 years, has seen the incredible progress that happens when this CGI community comes together to take action for progress. My efforts join yours and millions around the world, and we hustle to create a more equitable, just, and fair community for girls, women, and the LGBTQIA+ community and people with disabilities. For peace and security to manifest at every level in our personal relationships, in our politics and our economies, we must be free from gender-based harm that is subtle and covert, casual and structural. And I am so glad to be here in community with you today to declare once and for all that male sexual violence is the up with which we will not put. Thank you.
And now I'd like to invite my very dear friend, Dee Dee Bertram-Farmer, to the stage.
Hello, everyone. I practice global health in Africa and the Caribbean for the last 27 years. serving with many leading institutions, including Partners in Health and the University of Miami's Global Institute. More than ever, we need comprehensive and integrated healthcare and social protection for adolescent girls and young women. Today, I choose to bring attention to the problematic of teenage pregnancy and mental health. Quickly notice the data here. Globally, today, there are about 880 million adolescent girls and young women aged 15 to 24. That's 12% of the world's population. And most of them live in the low and middle income countries. Of them, 120 million are not in traditional education nor in professional training. Each year, 21 million got pregnant and 12 million gave birth. These young women do not just bear the brunt of maternal mortality, HIV infection, violence, depression, and anxiety, but poverty, gender discrimination, unemployment, political instability, natural disasters, and migration, to name a few. This is especially the situation of my home country, Haiti. Today, I stand here to ask the CGI community to join me in We Commit to increase access to financial resources and build strong partnership and collaboration with grassroots organizations so we can pave the way forward once for all for the 12%, on which the world's future depends. Together, let's continue to strengthen health and social protection structures and systems to better serve the most marginalized ones and left no one behind.
And now, as it is always my honor, I'd like all of you to warmly welcome someone that I have had the enormous privilege of quite literally looking up to my whole life until I became taller than her. Please join me in welcoming certainly one of my incredible heroes and someone I'm so thankful I get to call my mom, Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you, Chelsea. You're also an inspiration to me and to all here on the stage and all of you and so many, literally millions around the world who share our commitment to make gender equality a reality. Now, we know well that no one person can do this alone, a theme of our plenary this morning. But the good news is we don't have to. Every single person in this room is an ally in the fight for the rights of women and girls. As Chelsea said, when we come together to forge partnerships and open new pathways to progress, we can do extraordinary things. Now, we saw that 30 years ago when delegates from around the world came to Beijing to shine a spotlight on the status of women and girls. And from that conference, we spoke to the world with one voice, a voice that said very clearly women's rights are human rights, and that moving toward the fulfillment of those rights is an urgent call. Since then, generations of leaders and activists and Truly, people from every walk of life, especially our truth tellers, who you've heard from now, have answered that call, including the women that we heard from who represent the voices of so many others. But let's be honest, the work is far from done. So it is time to close the wage gap once and for all. It is time to protect and expand access to reproductive health care. Including safe abortion and quality maternity care once and for all. It is time to ensure that every girl, everywhere, can get the education she deserves to have once and for all. It is time to end gender-based violence and the excuses that keep it in the lives of our girls and women forever. It is time to tackle and end the climate crisis, which most disproportionately affects women and girls. And yes, it is time to end bigotry, discrimination, racism, misogyny, all of the ideologies that still stalk us once and for all. And it is time, finally, to make it old news to say that women's rights are human rights. I mean, I'm very grateful I had the chance to say that. I didn't think I'd still be saying it. Literally all over the world, day in and day out, because I thought we would have not only made progress, which we have, but we would have kept building on that progress, leading toward real equality. Now, many of you know there is an old saying that I particularly like: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. None of us can do this work alone. We need your ideas, your energy, your commitments. We need your commitments to action right here at CGI. We're excited by what we're doing to really formalize and integrate so much of our work into this fourth pillar on women and girls. So thank you for being here to be part of making this commitment real, for helping us to shape and inform this urgent effort, to bringing us your ideas about what you see as pressing needs. You know, women and girls here in this country and around the world face a lot of the same challenges that we have faced for a very long time. But we're also facing new challenges, aren't we? Brought about by climate change, new technology, new conflicts, refugee crisis, so much else. But we have never been more powerful or more committed. People ask me all the time, in the face of everything going on in the world, whether I remain optimistic. And I always say, yes, I do. I'm sometimes quick to add, I am an optimist who worries a lot, but I'm worrying so that we can bring people together to get things done, not to throw up my hands or to wring them, but to roll up my sleeves. I think we're up to the task together, and it's never been more urgent. So let's get to work and let's keep going. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Dee Dee. I'm so happy to see you, my friend. Oh, so glad.
2015, World Vision and our partners made an audacious commitment to reach everyone, everywhere we work, with clean water and help end the global water crisis. We are on track with this commitment, reaching 1 new person every 10 seconds with clean water. We had a game-changing idea. What if we brought one country forward and finished the job there in just 5 years? We picked Rwanda, where 1 million people needed clean water in the places we work. When we started, there was great need. And then each year, we reached more and more people until by 2023, all the districts turned green. We have finished the job. We've exceeded our commitment and reached more than 1 million people with clean water. We reached people like Serafina and Alois and their family who prayed for clean water.
urugendo twakoreshaga tujya kuvoma twawukoreshaga nk'isaha imwe n'igice cyangwa ebyiri. Byaratugoraga cyane kubera ko byatumaga akandi kazi tutagakora neza. Yewe buri munsi cyane twarasengeraga. Vanessa yabyukaga mu gitondo akajya kuvoma bikatuma akererwa amasomo. Ubuzima bwanjye bwahindutse cyane kuko nka Vanessa nabyutsaga kare kare ntakibyuka kare kare. Imyigire ya Vanessa yarahindutse, mbere yajyaga abona uwa nyuma ariko basigaye abo uwa mbere yagerageza akaba uwa kabiri.
World Vision has finished the job in Rwanda, and it's changing the country. Clean water means life.
Finish the job taught us very good lessons that together with other duty bearers like the government, we can actually make a difference and be more impactful.
We believe that Rwanda will be the first country in sub-Saharan Africa where everyone has access to clean water. World Vision is now focused on reaching 30 million more people with clean water by 2030, including finishing the job of ensuring clean water for everyone, everywhere we work in Zambia and Honduras. We believe that with everyone doing their part, we will solve the global water crisis together.
Please welcome back Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton and Ai Weiwei.
I am so excited to have this great privilege to talk with someone whom I admire so greatly, someone whose work I have followed, been privileged to see in some of his installations, and whose life really does speak to the challenge to keep going. So, Weiwei, thank you. Thank you for joining us, and I want to dive right in because, as I said, your life and work in many ways are great examples of what it means to keep going, especially when the odds seem so difficult. Like when you were imprisoned in China in 2011, which I remember well. Can you share with us some of the ways that you've dealt with these moments of personal challenge? How do you find the energy, the resilience, the motivation to keep going?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Well, first, it's nice to be with you again. I remember after my release.
We have to turn the volume up a little bit, I think, on the headset. Yeah.
After my release,
Wait, just 1 second. We might need a handheld, everybody. Yeah.
Oh, use this?
Yeah, that should be on.
Hello. Hi. Thank you. It's much more comfortable. Well, after my release, I realized the only leaders, international leaders, speak out about to the authoritarian Chinese government to say release Ai Weiwei is you. So I'm very grateful for that. So to openly give your idea and to precisely tell what is in the mind is so important in today's society. And for me to pass in this kind of difficulties, I always thinking that's been given me as an opportunity, as to challenge me to get into much deeper thinking about what I'm doing and why I'm doing that. So that helps a lot. And so once you firmly believe what you're doing, there's no fear. The fear always belongs to the other side. So yeah, that's how I feel.
That's so interesting because we talk about how we want to support people who are literally on the front lines of all these great struggles of our time, and that's one of the reasons we thought it was important to have you here, because that's where you've been for years now, and going deep, thinking hard about what you believe and what you want to convey seems like an important lesson for all of us. But we are living in a more fragmented world, and you have spoken about that. You know, forces like social media and artificial intelligence have certainly provided benefits, but they've also served to divide us further. And your art seems to comment on this social fragmentation. Tell us what you're thinking about the world in which we are currently living and the one with artificial intelligence in which we are moving, and how you think, and maybe help us think, how do we maintain our humanity? How do we maintain, as you say, the potential to be able to think our own thoughts, to make our own contributions?
We are living a world it's like very fragmental, and because we are no longer depends on the foundations of a single moral foundation. So it's very shattered world. It's like a broken mirror. But a broken mirror still reflects a reality. And art or culture or humanity still helps us to fix up. Because we cannot just depend on scientific development. Of course, we are benefited by scientific development, but if we are not at the same time make effort to protect the humanity, human rights, freedom of speech, and all those very crucial properties of human life or society's important quality, then doesn't matter how fast we develop, we're still living in a barbarian society. It's no way humanity can be saved just with scientific development.
You know, I thought a lot about an article you wrote in the New York Times, I think it was last year, about how you're thinking concerning China and what's happening in China today. You know, we're seeing a startling rise in authoritarianism globally, and I really hope you listened to this statistic because it shocked me, and I made sure it was double-checked, but 72% of the world's population right now, or 5.7 billion people, live under authoritarian rule. Now, here in the United States, we know we're grappling with this question as well, and it will be a central issue in our upcoming elections. You know, we know that free and open democratic societies are foundational requirements for advancing any of our social impact goals and initiatives. So I was struck in the article you wrote how you made it clear, you know, the internet is not going to change China. There are forces at work inside your home country. So how are you thinking about this global rise in authoritarianism and the crackdowns and the consolidation of power, particularly in China?
Well, I think we have to recognize that democratic practice is still a minority. We have to look at things historically, and we also have to look ourselves or examine our way of living. So this is a very complicated issue. If we talk about a competition or efficiency, then we realize China have a much powerful ways to really become even stronger. China is not going to disappear, and many other nations, like Indians or the other nations, they all catch up. So we have to realize what's called democracy today in the West. What is wrong? What is wrong? Why we can't provide this we often think is better value, freedom of speech, independent judicial system, and multiple power struggles in the party or free media. So something must be wrong there. Why we can't face or challenge, because we have to accept the reality. It's not just, it's just not being positive. It's not just about the poetry reading. It's really day-to-day reality. So I think that takes a philosophical thinking and historical perspective.
It's interesting because I know from your family history that your father, who was also an artist, a poet, your family were affected by the Cultural Revolution. You came out of that and you came of age at a time when there was a lot more openness in China, a lot more opportunity for artists and others to express themselves. But you're right to ask the question, what is wrong with us? I mean, why do we, whether we are in the United States and buying into lies that have no basis in truth, fact, evidence at all about our elections, or in China, following leaders who are closing instead of opening? As an artist, how do you convince people, persuade, inspire people to be on the side of freedom, of, as you say, free speech, freedom of thought, freedom of assembly, all of the freedoms that are really at the core of what it means to be a free person?
Thank you. I think of freedom very often be misunderstood. I think freedom is the essential quality of life. Without freedom, individuals or lose their identity, and the same as a society. So this is not just a choice, but rather it's the fundamental quality of life. So then we have to say freedom of expression, and which means you can say something different, you can be different, and you can be critical. Otherwise, what is freedom of expression? So we see often in today's society that is gradually not existing, it's deteriorating. So I think that is not a good sign for a strong society.
Well, I think it's important at at this meeting particularly, where people come together determined to try to find ways to solve problems, to keep going, as we say, to hear from someone who has faced limitations on your freedom, limitations on your free expression. What final thoughts or what words would you share with us, Weiwei, about how people who may not understand what it is to be in prison or what it is to be outcast, but who want to help those who are literally on the front lines, how would you suggest that we think about, what we each can do to support really the frontline fighters for freedom and democracy?
I think it's very simple. We have to say each individual is part of the humanity. So we are not fighting just for our own, but at the same time, we are part of the human society. And so when we talk about refugees, you mentioned it earlier, so we have to think of refugee are us, or we are the refugees. So even we're not losing our country or our property, but we're losing important foundations of humanity, which is much worse than just lose a house or property. So we have to see humanity as one, and we all responsible for the crisis. And only by doing that, then we know the individual expression is so important, because without individual freedom of expression, there's no freedom of expression in the society, and it's not going to be a healthy society.
Well, I think that's something that we can all agree on, but I love your emphasis on understanding that we are all part of humanity, and how we define ourselves in relationship to humanity will say a lot about the kind of future that we will have, because there are too many people in the world right now who want to set us against each other, to basically point fingers and scapegoat the other, to try to divide us, which only enhances their power and their position by trying to keep us all at odds with each other. And I cannot thank you enough, Ai Weiwei, for your work, which tries to make us lift our eyes up, see our common humanity, understand that someone being deprived of freedom anywhere in the world affects us. And so please join me in thanking this extraordinary artist and advocate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This concludes our morning program. Please make your way to your breakouts.